There are secrets that families bury so deep they believe the earth itself will keep them hidden forever. But in the Carolina Low Country, where the land remembers everything, every drop of blood, every whispered prayer, every child born in darkness, some truths refuse to stay buried. What you're about to hear is a story so disturbing, so carefully hidden, that it took more than a century for the pieces to finally come together. This is the account of a discovery that should never have been possible, of a life that officially never existed, and of a family's desperate attempt to hide what could not be hidden. If you are drawn to the darkest corners of American history, where the most disturbing truths hide in plain sight, then subscribe to this channel, because the stories we uncover here are the ones history tried to erase. The Chapman Plantation records, found in a Charleston archive in 1964, had one small inconsistency that confused historians for years. Among the careful ledgers tracking cotton yields, slave purchases, and household costs, there was a repeated entry: supplies purchased for 23 slaves. Yet every other document, tax records, insurance papers, letters with cotton buyers, listed only 22 enslaved people. For more than 10 years, this difference was brushed off as a simple mistake, the kind of small error that slips into long account books, until someone noticed the mistake appeared every month, every year, for more than 2 decades, always in the same handwriting, Richard Chapman's own. The Chapman family had been Carolina planters for 3 generations by 1846. Richard Chapman, at 47, had inherited Sweetwater Plantation from his father in 1829, 2,000 acres of prime cotton land and 22 enslaved people who worked it. The land had been in the family since his grandfather cleared it from cypress swamp in 1783, building the first rough cabin that later became the elegant main house with wide piazzas and Doric columns. Richard had been trained for this life from childhood. His father, Edmund Chapman, was a strict man who believed running a plantation required an iron will and total control. He taught his son every detail of cotton growing, managing enslaved labor, and the careful social rules needed to stay powerful among other planters. Richard learned well, perhaps too well. His wife Margaret was chosen for him by his parents when he was 23 and she was 17, a marriage arranged between 2 strong families with the same care used to breed fine horses. Margaret Ashworth came from old Charleston money. Her father owned a townhouse on Meeting Street and 3 low-country plantations. She brought a large dowry, including 12 enslaved people who became the core of Sweetwater's household staff. By 1846, they had been married 23 years and had 3 children who survived infancy: Eleanor, 18, Thomas, 15, and Grace, 12. 2 other children had died before their first birthdays, common enough that it barely appeared in Margaret's letters to her Charleston relatives. Infant death was just part of life, a pain to endure and then forget. On the surface, the Chapmans were a respected family. Richard attended St. Mark's Episcopal Church every Sunday, sat in the family pew in the 3rd row, served on the vestry, and gave generously to church funds. He was known in Beaufort District as a fair master, meaning he didn't whip slaves to death and usually fed them enough to keep them working. He tried to sell families together when possible, let them keep small garden plots, and used the lash only for serious rule-breaking. By Southern standards of the time, this made him humane. Margaret ran the household with cold efficiency, rising at dawn, checking the house servants' work, overseeing meals, managing the smokehouse, dairy, and vegetable garden with exact control. She wasn't cruel exactly, but she saw the enslaved people around her as tools to be kept in good condition, never as people with their own thoughts or feelings. She spoke to them the way one might speak to a slow dog, not unkind, but completely dismissive. Their children were raised in the same way. Eleanor, at 18, already handled parts of the household and learned the skills she would need as a future plantation mistress. Thomas was being prepared to take over Sweetwater one day, learning to ride, shoot, and give orders with the natural authority expected of a planter's son. Grace, the youngest, stayed in the schoolroom with her governess, learning French, watercolors, and the strict rules of plantation society. What no one outside the family knew, what no one could have known, was that their perfect world was about to crack open and reveal the rotten truth underneath. The first sign came in late March 1846, though months would pass before anyone understood what it really meant. A field hand named Samuel, one of the strongest workers on the plantation, started showing strange signs. Samuel was 32, a man who could work from sunrise to sunset in brutal heat without slowing down, who could pick 300 pounds of cotton in a single day during harvest. Born at Sweetwater, son of a woman named Rose who died of fever when he was 10, he had never known any other life. At first, the signs looked like simple tiredness. Samuel moved slower through the rows, struggled with easy tasks, needed more rest. The overseer, Walter Briggs, noticed and thought Samuel was being lazy. He gave warnings, then a whipping when the slow work continued, but the punishment didn't help. Samuel wasn't lazy. Something was truly wrong. Then came tremors in his hands, so bad he dropped his hoe twice in one morning. Difficulty speaking, words slurring like he was drunk, though no one had access to liquor. Moments when he stopped working and stared into nothing, eyes empty and distant. Once he fell to his knees in the cotton field, shaking so violently that 3 other slaves had to hold him down to stop him hurting himself. Dr. Henry Sutton, the physician who treated Chapman slaves when their value justified the cost, was called. Dr. Sutton was 56, trained at the Medical College of South Carolina, practicing in Beaufort District for nearly 30 years. He had seen every fever, ache, and strange illness the low country could produce. But Samuel's symptoms confused him. No fever, normal eyes, tongue, pulse. He asked about food, water, living conditions, work. He checked his medical books, sent letters to doctors in Charleston and Savannah describing the symptoms. Finally, he said it was nervous exhaustion from overwork. He suggested rest, impossible for a valuable worker, and laudanum, which Richard Chapman refused to buy. If every tired slave got opium, he told the doctor, I'd have a plantation full of addicts and no cotton picked. Send him back to the quarters. Let nature decide. Samuel was sent back to the fields, though he could barely work. He stumbled through the rows, dropped tools, stood frozen for minutes while others worked around him. Briggs wanted to whip him again, but even he could see it was pointless. 3 weeks later, a house servant named Dinah showed the same signs. Dinah was 28, worked in the laundry and kitchen, bought 8 years earlier from a neighbor after her owner died. She was skilled. Margaret especially liked her fine needlework and had her help make Eleanor's dresses. When Dinah's hands shook so badly she couldn't hold a needle, Margaret was annoyed, not worried. When Dinah started slurring words, forgetting sentences midway, Margaret thought she was being difficult. It wasn't until Dinah collapsed in the hallway, body shaking, that Margaret realized it was serious. Then James, barely 20, worked in stables, gentle with horses. Richard had planned to hire him out as a trainer for extra money. Those plans ended when James got tremors, confusion, empty stares. Then Clara, another house servant. Then Abraham, carpenter. Then Esther, kitchen help. By mid-April, 6 slaves were sick, all showing the same slow worsening. Weakness, shaking, confusion, that strange vacant look that scared even the other slaves. The pattern was clear. Something was spreading through the quarters. Some illness or poison Dr. Sutton couldn't name. And it moved slowly, no one died. They just became weaker, less useful, more like shadows of themselves. Dr. Sutton came back, this time more urgently. Richard Chapman was losing valuable property, and beyond money, there was fear the sickness might reach the white family. Disease didn't care about skin color, no matter what plantation society pretended. Dr. Sutton spent hours examining the sick, asking about food, water, sleeping places, work. He looked for anything they all shared that healthy slaves didn't. He checked books, wrote to colleagues. Finally, he admitted he had no answer. It's as if they're all being slowly poisoned, he told Richard Chapman in the plantation office. Symptoms match certain toxins, arsenic maybe, or heavy metal. But I find no common source. They work different places, eat from different pots, drink different water. No clear way they're all getting the same poison. The word poisoned sent fear through the plantation, not worry for the slaves, but terror of what it might mean for the whites. Poisoning was the nightmare every planter feared, the ultimate slave rebellion tool. Stories circulated quietly. House servants slowly killing masters with poison in coffee, field hands putting deadly things in wells, groups planning to poison many whites at once. The fear was deep. If slaves were poisoning other slaves, Maybe it was practice for something bigger. Or maybe it was meant to ruin the plantation. Either way, it threatened everything. Richard Chapman's hand shook when he lifted his morning coffee after that talk. He watched house servants with suspicion, wondering who might be planning something. He ordered slave quarters, searched for hidden poison or strange items. Food checked, pots examined, while water tested by making dogs drink first. Nothing found. No poison, no evidence of planning. The enslaved people worked quietly, heads down, saying nothing. If they knew anything about the sickness, they kept it secret. The slow poisoning, if that's what it was, continued. More fell ill. By early May, 10 sick. By late May, 14. None died, which made it worse. Death was normal on plantations. This lingering decay felt different, deliberate, cruel. The air at Sweetwater became heavy. The White family moved with paranoia, checking food, avoiding servants they didn't fully trust. Margaret dismissed 2 house servants on thin suspicions, sent them to fields despite years of service. Eleanor stopped walking the grounds, afraid to leave the main house. Thomas carried a pistol everywhere, even to church. The enslaved people lived in their own fear. They knew when whites got scared, black people suffered. They had seen it before: false accusations, innocent people punished, lash falling on anyone who looked wrong. They worked harder, stayed quiet, prayed the sickness would stop before someone decided hangings would fix it. But even as the sickness spread through the quarters, a different investigation was happening, one that would uncover a truth far worse than any disease. It started with the overseer, Walter Briggs, hard man, 41, unmarried, lived for his work. He had been at Sweetwater 12 years. He rode between fields daily, watching progress, enforcing orders. Not unusually cruel, didn't enjoy pain like some overseers. But he had no illusions. Slaves were property to manage like cattle. If whipping kept order, he whipped. He was observant, noticed small things, who had power among slaves, who was planning to run, when discipline was slipping. And what he began noticing in spring 1846 was that one slave seemed untouched by the sickness. More than that, this slave moved through the quarters with quiet authority, checking on the sick, speaking low, always watching. Watching the main house. Watching Dr. Sutton's visits. Watching Briggs himself, with an intensity that made the overseer uneasy. The slave's name, in records, was Lucas. Listed as 21, 5 feet 10 inches, bought 3 years earlier from an estate sale in Savannah, Georgia. Bill of sale called him healthy, strong, no vices, field hand. He worked cotton fields in season, did repairs in winter, never caused trouble. On paper, exactly the kind of slave every planter wanted: productive, quiet, ordinary. But Briggs felt something was wrong. Hard to explain. Maybe the way Lucas stood straight, pride, not submission. Maybe how older slaves listened when he spoke, despite his youth and newness. Maybe the intelligence in his eyes, unusual for a field hand. Or maybe something else Briggs didn't want to admit. In certain light, from certain angles, Lucas looked familiar. Not random resemblance. Familiar in a specific way. Lucas looked like Richard Chapman. Not obviously, skin dark enough to mark African ancestry, hair tightly curled. But under the surface, bone structure, jaw line echoed Chapman family features. In the antebellum South, this wasn't rare. Planters raped enslaved women, produced children who carried their looks but stayed enslaved. These children were sometimes whispered about, sometimes favored quietly, but never officially claimed as family. They were property, and whites pretended not to notice the family resemblance walking among their slaves. But Lucas was different. Records said he was bought 3 years ago. No connection to Chapman family. No reason he should look like Richard Chapman, unless the records were wrong. Briggs said nothing at first. A smart overseer learned when to notice and when to stay blind. Noticing too much could be dangerous, especially about the master's private matters. But curiosity, or instinct for survival, pushed him. One evening, when Richard Chapman was away in Charleston, Briggs went to the plantation office. He told himself it was routine paperwork, checking accounts. What he really wanted was to see Lucas's purchase records, to see if anything explained the resemblance, or confirmed his growing suspicion. The office was small: desk, file cabinets, shelves of ledgers covering decades. Richard kept perfect records: every bale sold, every slave bought, Every expense noted in his neat handwriting. Files organized by year, separate sections for different deals. Briggs found 1843 slave purchases, several that year. Woman named Betty and 2 children from a neighbor settling debts. Blacksmith from Charleston auction. 3 field hands from various places. Near the end, bill of sale for Lucas. Looked normal at first. Proper legal paper, Chatham County, Georgia seal, signed by executor of Henry Ravenel's estate. Described sale of male Negro named Lucas, approximate 18, sound body and mind, no scars, field hand. To Richard Chapman of Sweetwater for $850. Everything correct, except one small thing that made Briggs's stomach drop. The paper was too new. Briggs had handled hundreds of these papers. He knew what 3-year-old paper looked like, slight yellowing, ink faded in a certain way. This looked fresher, subtle difference, but once noticed, impossible to ignore. Seal looked right. Signatures looked real. But the paper itself, the physical sheet, didn't match 3 years of age. It looked made recently, then carefully placed among older papers to hide its newness. Which meant either Briggs was wrong, he didn't think so, or this document was forged, created after the fact to give a false history for a slave who might have been at Sweetwater much longer. But why would Richard Chapman forge papers for his own slave? What reason to fake purchase records? Unless Lucas wasn't purchased. Unless he was born at Sweetwater, and papers were made to cover that truth. But why hide it so carefully? Plenty of planters had children with enslaved women. Common knowledge, barely scandalous. Some favored those children, easier work, sometimes teaching to read. Never freed or claimed as family, but existence wasn't hidden. What made Lucas so different that it needed forged papers and deep deception? The answer hit Briggs like cold water. If Lucas was born at Sweetwater and looked like Richard Chapman, then he was Richard's son, born of rape or forced relationship with an enslaved woman. And for some reason, instead of the usual quiet acceptance, Richard Chapman went to extreme lengths to hide it. But why such effort? The thought was terrifying. If Lucas was Richard's son, then the secret was explosive. Not just embarrassment. Something worse. Briggs stood in the office holding the fake bill of sale, feeling the danger of what he now knew. Knowledge like this could get him killed if not handled carefully. But knowledge was also power. If played right, he could secure his future. Richard Chapman would pay well to keep this buried. An overseer with this leverage could demand anything. Higher pay, lifetime job, profit share. All he needed was to approach carefully, make it clear he wanted security, not blackmail, and negotiate a deal that helped both. Walter Briggs had no idea he had just signed his own death warrant. The meeting between Walter Briggs and Richard Chapman happened on an April evening in the Plantation office. Ledgers opened between them like a map neither wanted to read. Briggs requested the meeting, said it was about security concerns after the strange illness. Richard, worried about losing property and possible spread to his family, agreed. They met after dinner, cicadas singing, last light fading. Briggs started slow, talking about the sickness pattern, how it hit certain slaves but not others. Mentioned Lucas, how he moved freely among the sick, earned trust, might be planning something. Richard listened half-heartedly, mind elsewhere. Briggs saw he needed to be clearer. I've watched Lucas closely, Briggs said casually, words chosen carefully. He has a very particular face, bone structure, way he carries himself, very familiar somehow. Richard's attention snapped on. Eyes that had been wandering to Ledgers now locked on Briggs. Silence stretched. I'm not sure what you mean, Chapman said slowly, voice guarded. I'm sure it's nothing, Briggs continued, watching closely. Just coincidence. Though when I checked purchase records the other day, routine bookkeeping, you understand, I noticed something odd about Lucas's papers. The paper looked unusually fresh for 3 years old. But I'm sure there's a good explanation. Color left Richard Chapman's face. For a long moment he stared, mind calculating how much Briggs knew, how dangerous he could be. Then expression changed, fear faded, replaced by cold control. The face of a man who had made hard choices before. What do you want, Briggs? Briggs felt relief. Chapman was willing to deal. I want security, Mr. Chapman. I've been loyal 12 years. Never trouble, never spoken out of turn, always discreet. I'd like that loyalty recognized. Specific terms. Double my salary. Written lifetime employment guarantee here at Sweetwater. Small share of cotton profits. Say 5%. Fair for my silence. Ambitious, but not impossible. Overseers sometimes got profit shares on big places. Expensive, but worth it for silence. Richard considered, fingers tapping desk. Then nodded. Acceptable. I'll have papers drawn within the week. Salary increase retroactive to this month. Briggs felt victory. It worked. He'd turned dangerous knowledge into lifelong security, without threats that might back Chapman into a corner. They shook hands. Deal done. Briggs left the office feeling he'd played it perfectly. He was dead 3 days later. Official story, accident. Briggs was checking the cotton gin early morning, before most slaves started work. Somehow, no one explained how, his clothing caught in the machinery. Maybe loose shirt, maybe leaned too close while gin ran. Cotton gins were deadly. Accidents common, usually to slaves operating them. By the time people heard screams and stopped the machine, Briggs was crushed. Right arm pulled in, chest and abdomen mangled. Still alive when pulled out, bleeding heavily. Dr. Sutton rushed, but too late. Briggs died. Doctor examined body, called it accident, signed papers. No inquest. Accidents happened on plantations. Authorities rarely investigated unless clear foul play. Richard Chapman arranged proper funeral. Sent body to churchyard at St. Mark's. Bought headstone. Sent $200 to Briggs's sister in Richmond. In letter, praised Briggs as faithful employee who died serving the plantation. Expressed deep regret. Outwardly, Chapman seemed truly saddened. Attended funeral. Paid everything. Spoke movingly about loyalty. No one questioned. Losing a good overseer was real loss, economic problem. No one dug deeper. No one wanted to believe something darker. But slaves knew. In quarters, where truth lived in whispers, they knew Briggs was killed. They didn't know details, didn't know Lucas's true parentage, fake papers, office confrontation. But they understood plantation justice. Briggs learned something dangerous, and that knowledge killed white men as surely as black ones. They also understood something worse. If Richard Chapman killed a white overseer to protect a secret, he would kill slaves without hesitation. Whatever Briggs discovered, it was dangerous enough to cross that line. Anyone too close to that secret, anyone asking questions, might be next. Quarters became quieter. People kept heads down, avoided attention, never discussed sickness or Lucas, who moved among sick like a shadow. And Lucas knew. He had seen Briggs watching him. Seen the change, casual look to focused suspicion to recognition. When Briggs died so suddenly, days after that suspicion grew, Lucas understood his own existence was at the center. For the first time, he questioned his own story. He remembered arriving as teenager, long journey from Georgia, estate sale were separated from mother. Or he thought he remembered. But when he examined those memories closely, details blurred. Mother's voice, no face. Georgia plantation, no clear buildings, no names of others there. Auction, vague city, no auctioneer's face, no clear journey after. Memories felt planted, like a story told so often he believed it. But the more he looked, less real they became. And scars on his back, from whippings every slave got. But he couldn't remember most of them. Knew he must have been punished, all were. But specific times, reasons, pain gone. Like ground he stood on was thin crust over nothing. Lucas began watching closer, looking for clues about himself. Listened when old slaves talked past. Tried to see if anyone remembered him arriving 3 years ago. No one did. They treated him like he'd always been there. But when he asked specific memories from early days, no one could recall clearly. He watched main house, studied white family. Noticed things. Richard sometimes watched him with complicated look. Not just anger or guilt, something deeper. Margaret turned away if she saw him. Refused to go near fields where he worked. Chapman children, Eleanor, Thomas, Grace, had features echoing his. High cheekbones, I set, jawline. He once thought it coincidence. Now, with Briggs dead, past dissolving, he wondered. Thought formed, almost too impossible. What if he wasn't just any slave? What if his past was manufactured for a reason? Memories planted. Presence made white family uneasy. What if he was Richard Chapman's son? Idea absurd, except it explained everything. Fake papers to cover birth at Sweetwater. Resemblance to Chapman children, half-siblings. Richard's complicated look. Margaret's avoidance, reminder of what happened. But if true, his whole life was lie. Born at Sweetwater, should have been privilege. Instead condemned to slavery by birth. Parents chose to enslave own child rather than acknowledge him. Cruelty beyond physical bondage. Psychological cruelty of making him believe he was property when by blood he was Chapman. Lucas didn't know what to do. No proof, only suspicion. Couldn't confront Richard, would die. But couldn't ignore. Couldn't return to ignorance. Another complication, illness hadn't touched him. 14 sick now, growing weaker. Lucas perfectly healthy. At first thought luck. Now saw pattern. Sick ones, long-time slaves at Sweetwater. People who would remember if Lucas really arrived 3 years ago. Healthy ones, newer purchases. No knowledge of old history. Lucas understood. Someone poisoning people who might remember truth. Eliminating witnesses to official story of his origins. Only one person had motive and means, Margaret Chapman. Realization should have scared him for his life. Instead, made him angry, deep, burning anger he'd never allowed before. Slaves learned early, hide anger. Show resentment, get whipped, sold, killed. Survival meant submission, swallow rage until almost forgotten. Lucas thought he'd learned that. Now, understanding what was done to him, something broke open. Fury, almost cleansing, burned away careful submission. He couldn't rebel openly, death, but couldn't do nothing. Couldn't let Margaret keep poisoning to hide his birth. Needed leverage. Needed force Richard to acknowledge truth, stop poisoning, make right. What leverage could slave have against master? Answer simple. Truth itself. Not just parentage, mattered only to Chapmans. But poisoning truth. If Lucas proved Margaret poisoned slaves deliberately, documented undeniable way, Richard would have to act. Poisoning slaves wasn't just moral crime, economic crime. Worse, legal and social consequences that would ruin family reputation. But Lucas couldn't prove alone. Enslaved, illiterate, no access to evidence. Needed ally. Someone investigate, collect proof, force open. Needed Dr. Henry Sutton. Doctor already suspected poisoning. Examined sick, noted symptoms, suggested toxin. If Lucas pointed Dr. Sutton right direction, gave reason to look closer at Margaret, Doctor might discover truth himself. Approaching Doctor dangerous. White doctors rarely took slave information seriously. Accusing mistress, punishment, not belief. Needed indirect, plant suspicion without direct accusation. Lucas watched Margaret's routines. Noted private kitchen work, supplies used, storage. Noticed special preserves, baked goods, sometimes given to house servants as rewards, or sent to quarters as gifts. Noticed gifts went to specific people, who later fell ill. Noticed Margaret ordered special supplies from Charleston, kept in private kitchen, not main stores. Fine cornmeal, imported items, claimed for family, but sometimes reached favored slaves. Armed with this, Lucas acted. Next Dr. Sutton visit. Lucas made sure working near main house. When doctor came out after examining patient, Lucas nearby with water buckets, seeming normal work. Doctor, Lucas said quietly, eyes down submissive. May I speak, sir? Dr. Sutton looked surprised. Slaves rarely started talk with whites. What is it? About sickness, sir. I thought about what you said, poison. Remembered something might help. Sutton's attention sharpened. Go on. All sick people, sir, received gifts from main house. Special cornmeal, preserves, baked goods from Mistress Chapman's kitchen. Don't think it means anything, sir, but you said looking for common factors. Lucas spoke neutral, like simple observation, no accusation. Let doctor decide meaning. Doctor's face changed, surprise, thought, careful neutral. That's interesting. Thank you for mentioning it. Yes, sir. Anything else? No, sir. Lucas bowed, left, heart pounding. He'd done what he could. Now wait. See if Dr. Sutton followed thread. What doctor did next would decide if Lucas succeeded or died. Dr. Sutton wasn't stupid, nor naive about plantation life. New mistresses sometimes poisoned, husbands, rivals, rebellious slaves. Rarely, but happened. Open secret in South. But poisoning many slaves. Unusual, shocking. If Margaret doing this, why? What motive to poison valuable property? Risk exposure, damage on household. Dr. Sutton investigated, carefully. Didn't want false accusations. Didn't want to offend Chapman's, if innocent explanation. Started by re-examining sick slaves. Asked detailed about food days before symptoms. Pattern quick. Every sixth slave ate something from Margaret's private kitchen. Not main kitchen for house servants. Smaller kitchen attached main house. Margaret supervised personally. Dr. Sutton asked samples of distributed items. Margaret, not yet suspecting, gave willingly. Doctor claimed testing nutritional content. See if deficiency caused illness. Tests simple, conclusive. Cornmeal contained arsenic. Not much. Enough gradual poisoning if eaten regularly. Preserves clean. Baked goods clean. But cornmeal, Margaret distributed as generous gift to specific slaves, contaminated. Dr. Sutton in impossible position. Proof Margaret poisoning slaves. Revealing it would ruin Chapman's reputation, possibly his career. Planter families didn't like doctors exposing scandals. He could be blacklisted district-wide. But medical ethics, law, bound him. Poisoning illegal, even victims enslaved. Silence, more harm, complicit in crime. Dr. Sutton decided. Confront Richard privately. Present evidence. Let Chapman handle wife. Family scandal contained. Poisoning stopped. Not full justice. Best compromise in his society. Confrontation happened May evening in Plantation office. Doctor brought test results. Documentation who poisoned when. Evidence contaminated cornmeal from Margaret's stores. Richard listened, face stone. No interruption, no denial, no excuse. Just listened as doctor laid case against wife. When finished, long silence. Finally Chapman spoke. What do you plan to do with this, Dr. Sutton? Depends on you, Mr. Chapman. Poisoning stops immediately. You handle situation in family. I'll consider private medical matter. If continues, or slaves die, I must report to authorities. I see. Chapman's fingers drummed desk, only agitation sign. You've probably wondered why my wife would do something so irrational. Poison valuable property. Risk exposure, damage household. Thought occurred. Did slave who brought this, Lucas, I believe, offer theories? Dr. Sutton felt chill. Way Chapman said Lucas. Sudden focus on one slave who gave key information, suggested danger. He pointed pattern. No speculation on motive. No, he's smarter than that. Chapman stood, walked to window, looked at darkening grounds. Dr. Sutton, what I tell you stays here. Speak to anyone. I deny everything. End your practice in district. Understand. I understand. My wife tried eliminating witnesses. People who might remember things contradicting official story of Lucas's arrival. Because Lucas didn't arrive 3 years ago from Georgia. He's been here entire life. Born at Sweetwater, 1824. Dr. Sutton mind raced. If born 1824, he's your son. Yes. And you kept him enslaved. What choice? Child too dark to acknowledge. My wife unfaithful, or I believed so. Free him, questions asked. Reputation destroyed. Only way, hide among slaves. Create paper trail explaining presence without family connection. That's monstrous. That's practical. I provided for him. Fed, clothed, work suitable. Alive, more than many in his place. Secret maintained 22 years. Would have stayed. If wife hadn't panicked, started insane campaign eliminating witnesses. Dr. Sutton struggled. Casual way Chapman described enslaving own child. Like reasonable solution to social problem. Almost unbelievable. But antebellum South, humans property, reputation over humanity. By time standards, Chapman probably thought merciful letting boy live. What now? Stop poisoning, obviously. Wife sent sanitarium, nervous exhaustion. Comfortable there, situation contained. As for Lucas, more complicated. Free him. He tells story anyone listens. Not stupid, figured who he is. See it in how he looks at me now. Free, talk. Truth comes out anyway. Keep enslaved. Knowing what knows. Dangerous different way. Slave nothing lose. Most dangerous. So solution? Don't know yet. But I'll think. Meantime, need silence. Doctor. Complete. About poisoning, Lucas parentage, everything. In exchange, poisoning stops immediately. Compensate you well for discretion. Ensure no harm affected slaves. They recover. Incident forgotten. Dr. Sutton knew bought. Also knew little choice. Speaking out, destroy professionally, probably not help enslaved. Best, immediate danger stop. Hope Chapman's Lucas solution not killing him. Word Lucas not harmed. Chapman considered. You have it. Whatever decide, won't kill. He is, after all, my son. Terrible bargain, Best doctor could get. Agreed. Took money. Left carrying heavy knowledge. What happened next? Fast point 3 days. Margaret Chapman removed Sweetwater. Taken private sanitarium near Columbia. Official story. Nervous breakdown. Stress managing household during slave illness. Stopped eating, speaking, needed special care, couldn't get home. Believable, partially true. Margaret under stress. By removal time, genuinely stopped speaking/eating. Whether real collapse or performance avoiding consequences, unknown. Poisoned slaves recovered slowly. No new arsenic. Bodies cleared toxin. Tremors faded. Confusion lifted. Weeks most back work. Few never full strength, but survived. More than expected worst crisis. Lucas, summoned main house. Never inside before. Slaves entered servants. Field hands no reason cross threshold. But servant message clear. Mr. Chapman wanted see alone study. Lucas approached main house. Fear and strange excitement. Whatever happened, decisive. Either Richard decided kill quietly, or something changed circumstances. Ushered study. Bookshelves, big desk. Richard sat behind desk. Looked older. Recent events showed face lines. Closed door. Lucas obeyed. Stood awkward silence. You know, don't you? Not question. Yes, sir. How long? Suspected after overseer died. Certain after saw pattern who's sick. Chapman nodded slow. You're intelligent. Caused problems, impressive too. Different circumstances, lighter skin, educated, opportunities. Might become significant. Lucas felt anger rise, kept voice neutral. Instead, made slave. Yes, won't apologize. Apologies meaningless. Did what thought must, protect family. Your existence threatened everything built. Made choice, lived with it. Now things changed. Wife's actions made situation untenable. Too many suspect too much. Dr. Sutton knows truth. You know, only time before others ask questions. Need solution protects both. Lucas waited, hardly hoping. I'm freeing you, Chapman said quietly. But conditions. You leave South Carolina immediately. Go north, Philadelphia, established free black community. Provide manumission papers, letter introduction contacts. Money, establish yourself. In exchange, never speak connection this family. Never claim Chapman name. Never tell anyone happened here. Never return South Carolina. And if refuse, then both trouble. Can't keep you knowing what no. Can't kill without investigation I avoid. Only leverage truth. My leverage, your desire free. Help each other, or destroy each other. Offering first. Lucas considered. Freedom, bought silence. Life Philadelphia, built denying history, identity. Another prison, infinitely better current one. What others? Poisoned slaves, punished. No. Suffered enough. Punishing draw attention. Left alone. And wife, sanitarium rest life. Not coming back. Lucas thought woman poisoned him. Others, willing kill protect secret not hers. No sympathy. No triumph. Fate another tragedy piece. From one act infidelity/rape, led conception 22 years ago. Accept offer, Lucas said finally. But one condition. Chapman eyebrow raised. Not position negotiate. Neither you. Condition. Baptized before leave, your name. Recorded church register, Lucas Chapman exists. Baptized. Person identity. Deny everything else, can't deny that. Small thing, mattered Lucas. Meant somewhere official record, true identity preserved. Even never spoke, lived different name or simply Lucas. Proof existed. Chapman's son. More than property appeared/disappeared records. Chapman considered long. Then agreed. Very well. Arrange. Charleston, baptized St. Philip's. Priest won't ask questions, compensate adequately. So decided. Lucas Chapman fate negotiated study. Freedom purchased silence. Identity preserved one small church record. Might never read by anyone mattered. Journey Charleston, 2 days. Richard Chapman and Lucas traveled together. Master/slave public. Father/son private silence. Spoke little journey. What say? Everything important said. Small talk absurd. Stayed Charleston Hotel. Lucas servants' quarters. Richard proper room upstairs. Baptism St. Philip's. May morning. Priest Reverend Thornton. Ceremony blank expression. Understood unusual. Knew better ask. Lucas knelt baptismal font. Waterhead. Heard name. True name. Spoken aloud first time life. I baptize you Lucas Chapman. Name Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Priest signed register. Lucas Chapman. Adult baptism. Parents unknown. Lie. Protected everyone. Important. Name Lucas Chapman officially recorded. Recognized. Proof existed. After baptism, Richard took Lucas attorney Josiah Crawford. Manumission papers prepared. Notarized. Sealed envelope Lucas carry. Described Lucas. Male color. Approximate 21. Freed by Richard Chapman Sweetwater. Faithful service recognition. All lies. Right lies. Allowed live free north. Chapman gave $200. Large sum. Support months careful. Letter introduction Methodist Minister Philadelphia. Reverend Thompson. Helped freed slave settle. Letter doesn't mention connection. Chapman explained. Says freed slave good character. Deserves assistance. Reverend Thompson help work, housing. Beyond that, on own. I understand. Outside attorney office. Parting forever. Chapman looked Lucas. Same complicated expression. Guilt, regret, relief, almost affection. I'm sorry, Chapman said quietly. Not sorry enough change past, but sorry. You deserved better. Lucas could rage. 22 years stolen. Raised bondage when should privilege. Cruelty enslaving own child. But point? Nothing change happened. Anger not help build new life. Goodbye, Mr. Chapman. Lucas said. Formal address. No family claim. Goodbye, Lucas. Shook hands. Strange gesture former master / formerly enslaved son. Lucas turned, walked away. Didn't look back. Nothing behind worth seeing. Everything mattered ahead. Lucas Chapman arrived Philadelphia September 1846. Manumission papers, introduction letter, $200, everything owned. City overwhelming first. Never seen so many buildings, people, movement, noise. Philadelphia nearly 400,000 residents 1846, one largest American cities. Unlike South, black people enslaved or precarious freedom, Philadelphia had large free black community. Over 20,000, built churches, businesses, schools, networks. Reverend Thompson, Methodist minister Chapman wrote, kind man 50s, asked no uncomfortable past questions, helped Lucas find boarding house black men Moyamincing district, introduced people work, invited Mother Bethel church services. Lucas found carpenter apprentice work. Basic woodworking skills from Sweetwater, learned quick. Carpenter, free black James Fortin Jr., paid fair, taught trade finer points. Within year, skilled independent work, also learned read/write. Night classes Pennsylvania Abolition Society. Revolutionary, not just skills, understanding access knowledge directly. No white mediation controlling slave information. 1849, Lucas married Rachel Dorsey. Rachel born free Philadelphia, daughter barber/seamstress. Intelligent, devout, practical, deep commitment helping newly freed adjust North life. Taught Lucas navigate free black Philadelphia world, avoid slave catchers, racist violence, build genuine life. For children, William 1850, Sarah 1852, James 1854, Catherine 1857. Raised proud, educated, free, everything denied him. Told nothing past. Only enslaved South Carolina. Gained freedom before North. Knew nothing Chapman family. Grandfather kept father bondage. White half-siblings South. Lucas kept promise. Never spoke publicly Chapman connection. Never claimed name. Never told happened. Never returned South Carolina. Lived simply Lucas Chapman. Free black carpenter. Methodist church member. Husband. Father. Overcame slavery. Built good life. But never forgot. Near life end. 65. Weakening age/illness. Wrote truth. Letter children. Explained real identity. Origin. Done him. Sealed. Instructions not open until death. Read together. Decide information. 1887 letter. Lucas finally told story. Described Sweetwater childhood. Dawning wrongness. Terrible revelation parentage. Wrote poisoning. Briggs death. Confrontation Chapman. Negotiation freedom. Explained silence 40 years. Why breaking now? Wrote passage later famous historians. I sometimes wondered my life if born right color skin. Raised main house not quarters. Acknowledged first Chapman's son. But then think what required. Accept system made distinctions matter. Participate enslaving others. Become kind man father was. Realize slavery. Terrible. Made free ways white siblings never could. They trapped supremacy prison. I escaped larger world man worth nothing skin color or birth circumstances. Lucas Chapman died January 1889. Wife, children around. Obituary Christian recorder, quiet dignity, firm faith, overcame slavery built purpose/integrity life. No Chapman mention, no secret hint. Children open letter after funeral, read father's story, shock, grief, anger, debated public, seek Chapman acknowledgement/reconciliation, or keep private family history. Chose latter. Chapman family no longer mattered. Public exposure, painful attention. Kept letter, past generations, private testament, one man impossible life. Stayed private until 1964, plantation records discovered, telling discrepancies. Historians asked questions Lucas descendants finally answered. Back Sweetwater. Life continued appointed rhythms. Household never recovered 1846 events. Margaret lived 7 more years sanitarium. Never spoke, wrote, acknowledged visitors. Staff treated humanely, remained silence locked. Death 1853. Cause heart failure. Nurse later said believed Margaret gave up, decided death better living what done. Richard lived another 15 years, died 1861. South Carolina seceding, Civil War beginning. Never remarried, spoke first wife, acknowledged son beyond 3 legitimate children. Obituary Charleston Mercury praised Carolina manhood fine example. Old school planter, honor/principle, served community distinction. Irony, historians know, unbearable. Eleanor married neighboring planter 1848, moved Georgia, died childbirth 1851 age 23. Thomas inherited Sweetwater, managed until 1865. Union troops burned buildings, freed remaining slaves. Spent rest life resurrect plantation economy, failed repeatedly, drank heavily cope loss only world known. Died 1882, broke, bitter. Grace, youngest, married Charleston merchant, lived early 20th century. Last remembered 1846, last might confirm/deny Lucas truth. If knew anything, never spoke. Died 1923, took knowledge grave. Dr. Henry Sutton, knew too much, died suddenly apoplexy 1848, less 2 years poisoning crisis. Only 58, good health before. Convenient timing. Historians wonder natural, or Richard decided even paid witness too dangerous. No proof, suspicion remains. Poisoned slaves lived bondage until Civil War freed. Most stayed South Carolina emancipation, took surnames Freeman, Washington, other freedom names. None spoke publicly poisoning or Lucas. Descendants later reported family stories year mistress went mad. Young man disappeared Sweetwater. Sweetwater plantation passed Chapman hands, sold debts 1890s. Changed hands 20th century. Disrepair, bought Historical Preservation Society 1970s. Now public, antebellum architecture/plantation life example. Tourists walk restored rooms, admire period furniture. Listen guides describe planter family daily life. Visit restored slave quarters. Interpretive signs explain enslaved living/working/dying conditions. But nothing explains Lucas. Nothing tells 23rd slave. Appears account books nowhere else. Nothing hidden plain sight child. Existence secret maintained any cost. Nothing son erased history. Baptized secret. Freed preserve lie. Found more humanity bondage than family freedom. Question haunts historians. How many other stories like this, still buried, unknown? Chapman case remarkable, not unique, documented. Discrepancies records, fake documents, baptism register, Lucas letter. Evidence survived, noticed people cared investigate. But every Lucas story survived. How many vanished? How many children hidden in slave populations? Parentage unrecorded, unacknowledged, undocumented historians discover? How many secrets locked archives? Waiting someone notice inconsistency, pull thread, uncover truths buried meticulous care. Historical record suggests many. Researchers' plantation documents found numerous unexplained slave count discrepancies. Individuals, some records, not others. Children, mysteriously unrecorded parentage. Most cases never fully investigated. Evidence doesn't exist. People involved made sure. What makes Chapman extraordinary, not what happened. Enslaving master-child, systematic poisoning hide truth, freedom purchase silence. Probably more common than think. Extraordinary, we know. Name people involved. Trace story Lucas birth 1824 through death 1889 beyond. Descendants living today. Yes, Lucas Chapman has living descendants. Over 100, spread United States, carrying story family histories. Some William oldest son. Some Sarah, James, Catherine. Teachers, doctors, artists, mechanics. Ordinary American lives. Carrying legacy man born enslaved died free, denied birthright, built better own hands. 2003, some Lucas descendants tried contact last living Chapman relatives, share story, perhaps seek acknowledgement/reconciliation. Rebuffed. Chapman descendants didn't believe or didn't want acknowledge. Two family branches, divided race/history, remain divided today. Fitting perhaps. Lucas spent life escaping shadow family enslaved him. Descendants built identities, legacies. Independent Chapman name everything represents. Don't need acknowledgement. White relatives never fully understand Lucas endured. Appreciate accomplished. Story matters. Not one family. What reveals system made stories possible. American slavery built fiction racial categories natural/immutable. White/black fundamentally different humans, different destinies/rights. Lucas' existence proved Liehart system. Richard Chapman's son, genetically much Chapman Eleanor, Thomas Grace. Random genes skin tone, mother unknown identity, rigid race/legitimacy rules. Caste slavery, while half-siblings luxury. Boundary-free/enslaved. Human/property. Child/commodity. Never inherent differences. Only power. What holders willing do maintain position. When boundary threatened. Child born revealed arbitrariness. Response not question system. Hide evidence. Bury truth. Poison expose. Whatever necessary maintain fiction racial categories natural, slavery justified. Real horror. Not poisoning. Deception. Even enslaving son-father. Horror casual way done. Efficiency human life erased official record. Certainty reputation mattered more humanity. Chapman family thought succeeded. Century plus, did. Secret buried. Reputation intact. Lucas true identity unknown almost everyone, including himself most life. But secrets survive. Truth emerges, deepest graves. Fake documents discovered. Poisoning pattern recognized. Baptism record found. Lucas letter preserved, eventually public. Now we know. Story told, Richard Chapman. Worked hide son, falsified documents, silenced witnesses, allowed wife poison maintained secret, failed. Shame public. Crime recorded. Son tried erase history, more memorable than ever. If story disturbed you, way disturbed me, consider subscribing. History uncover here not comfortable, true. Truth, terrible, matters more comfortable lies. Cotton fields Sweetwater silent now. Main house empty except tourists. Walk restored rooms. Take photos. Marvel antebellum architecture. Slave quarters preserved suffering monuments. Rough planks/dirt floors maintained reminders how people lived/worked/died bondage. Stand dusk. Tour groups gone. Shadows long across old fields. Might think walls stories tell. Secrets witnessed. Lives contained. Truths buried fields along people knew. Wonder, as I do, what other impossible stories waiting discovered. What other children hidden? What other truths buried? What other evidence collective shame lies moldering forgotten archives? Waiting someone notice numbers don't add up. Documents don't match? Official story doesn't explain reality? Lucas Chapman story extraordinary. We know, probably not unique. Somewhere vast documentary record American slavery. Other discrepancies, inconsistencies, secrets might light if someone looks carefully. Asks right questions. Refuses convenient lies. Work uncovering continues. Every time story emerges darkness, understand little more slavery really was. Not sanitized textbook version. Lived reality system treated humans property. Bent every institution/law/social norm maintain fundamental injustice. Lucas lived free 43 years after leaving South Carolina. Not long enough make up 22 bondage years, but something. Built life, raised family, contributed community, found dignity freedom, denied slavery. End. made sure truth survived, wrote down, sealed carefully, trusted descendants preserve until time told without danger. Act remembrance. Refusal let story die, greatest legacy. Because now remember, now know. Knowing, cannot forget. That makes stories matter. Not facts, dates/names/documents. What force confront past, systems oppression built/maintained/benefited from. Every time uncover story like Lucas Chapman. Pull back veil history carefully constructed hide worst happened. Force see generations Americans tried forget/ignore/explain away. Maybe look long enough, unflinchingly enough terrible truths. Finally understand past isn't really past. Systems enslaved Lucas, racial categories, power hierarchies, casual dehumanization, didn't disappear slavery ended. Evolved, adapted, new forms, never fully went away. Lucas Chapman's story window that history. Through window, brave enough look, see not just past, present, not just was, continues be. That why stories matter. Why told? Why cannot let stay buried? Earth remembers. Documents remember. Now, someone noticed discrepancy old plantation records. Courage investigate. We remember. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one.